everyone, Paul out Sam. Welcome to part 2 of our Tamiya 124th Mazda RX-7 R1 video build. So this is an ongoing build that we're just going to use spray cans on, no airbrush whatsoever. So that theme is going to continue today with some pretty awkward mounting of parts for paint. Very awkward, time consuming, wasting a lot of paint. I've got thoughts on this build. The build's complete now. The last two parts are due to be uploaded, this one and the final one. And I'll have all my final thoughts in the last part of the build. So let's jump straight in. Let's get cracking and let's continue on with the build. Hey everyone, please subscribe to the channel, click the bell notifications, get notified of our latest videos, give the video a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and leave a comment. I do read and appreciate every comment you guys and girls leave behind. I may not reply to them all, but they are all appreciated. And there's a link in the description of the video that takes you to a big long list of all handy videos and a lot of the products I use in my videos. You now have the chance to support the video content creation by using Patreon or the PayPal me link in the description down below. All the videos will always remain free to watch. This is just your chance to help support the videos. Okay, so we're going to start today by cutting off all the parts we need to clean up to get ready for primer. Now, there are a few parts on this car that A, not used, and B, that have opposing parts for left and right hand drive. Also a spare steering wheel. So we're going to cut everything off and then go through and figure out exactly what we need and where we need it. Now, we're going to do this in the left hand drive option. So that's what the instructions call for. So that's what we're going to do. Keep it nice and simple, follow the instructions, and yeah, just build it out the box completely. I did think of changing a few things. I even considered flocking the carpet, and my rationale behind not doing it was, well, if someone's going to be spray canning it, they're probably going to be pretty new to this. They're probably not going to be flocking it. So I thought we'll keep it simple for this build it complete out of the box, nice and simple. So with all the parts cut off and we've got all the relevant parts we need, double checking we've got the right ones, we can clean up all the sprue attachment points. So using a combination of UMP sanders, we're going to clean them all up and then use our buffer to get them back to clean plastic. So we've got our 220 1200 thinny ahead of us there, the double-sided one. Very, very handy tool, a bit wider than a thinny stick. But good for getting parts like this. So just careful sanding, and then, like I say, buff it back up with the buffer, and then polish it with the polisher, and get it back to as new looking plastic. Thinny stick now, 400 thinny stick to clean up all the running gear. Bit of clean up here, but that's the way it goes with a lot of these kits. There's a seam on everything, so time spent here, it's up to you if you do it or not. There will be a visible seam, so I try to go around and remove as much of it as I can. My preferred method is using sanders. You could also use the back of a knife, a seam scraping tool, but I think sanders do a better job. They conform and leave a nicer finished surface at the end. So your choice which way you go about it. For me, I like using our sanders. So the exhaust, I'm going to drill it out. So I've got a 1.5mm drill bit, and I'm just carefully taking away all the extra material from inside using my Tamiya pin vise, and that way we'll get a much thinner looking exhaust that will look much better on the back of the car, because the standard one looked a bit rubbish, to be honest. So there we go, we've widened that, looks a lot better. We've got seams to remove all over this exhaust as well. So standard process as before, get our sander in there, clear the seam, and then come in with our buffer and buffer up to new plastic. So just take your time with the sanders. Need to go really heavy handed. We're not trying to reshape the exhaust or reprofile it. We're just trying to move that ever so slightly raised seam line that is present along all the parts. So we've gone from the harder 220 1200 sander to the 220 sponge, and then onto the buffer, and so on, and continue till it's gone. Got some Tamiya extra thin plastic weld mix here. We're going to glue the engine parts together. Strange engine on this. The Wankel rotary is a very, very small compact unit, putting out an immense amount of power. So it's going to glue the engine block together and put that aside to one dry. And now we've got the challenging part of mounting everything for primer. Now, I've watched a few Japanese builders over the years, and by the look of it, quite a lot of them live in small apartments. They don't have the luxury of a spray booth, and quite often an airbrush a lot of the time. One guy in particular I followed sprayed all of his parts out on his balcony. So the way he did it was he put tape down, sticky side up on some cardboard sheets, mounted everything, and went out there to spray them. So I thought, this is probably the most simplest way of doing this. If we mounted like normal on cocktail sticks, we'd waste 3 times as much primer. So this way we're going to prime en masse and try and get as much as the primer down on these parts as we can. So get all the parts nestled up together in a line, and we can just go along the line and prime everything as we go. So basically just stick everything on, make sure it's nice and secure, and we'll just go down the line, sticking everything in place. And then what we're going to have to do is prime one side, let it dry, turn everything over, prime the other side, and then the same for paint. So quite a lengthy process, and yes, quite a pain in the backside, to be honest. So I was going to go through and put all these parts onto this, get everything primed up. Like I say, we're then sadly going to repeat it for the other side and for the paint colours as well. Any detail we'll pick out by brush. But the idea of this build was to not use the airbrush, and that is what we're going to do. Yes, it's much easier airbrushing, but there we go. There's all the parts for the interior and the chassis, running gear, etc. all mounted onto here. We've got some Tamiya grey fine surface primer. I've got my respirator on, my spray booths on, I've got a glove over my left hand that's holding the board, and there you go. Now I've got my respirator on. Silly, silly. We're just going to put a couple of light coats down, build it up slowly, and then it can dry overnight, and then come in the next morning, spin it all round, and put our second coat on. So we're just misting it over the top. Sadly, we're also wasting an absolute ton of paint priming the cardboard, but it's just the way it is. How else would we do it using a spray can? So this is how we're going to do it. Now, a lot of people are going to be watching saying you could use Halford's primer, yada yada yada, Rust-Oleum, Duplicolour. No, I'm not using any of that. I'm sticking to a model grade primer. Tamiya's never let me down, and this is what we're going to use. So, yes, while they may work for some, I'm not going to risk it. I don't want to melt everything. I don't want to ruin my paintwork. This is tried and tested. I've used this many times at the spray can. It works very well. But we're just going around, getting all these angles. As you can see, probably 90% of the paint is completely missing and just priming the cardboard. So it is a very, very wasteful way of painting. So once we've got one coat down, I can just sit and flash off for 5-10 minutes. And then we can come back and put another coat down. So I'm just making sure we've got a base coat equally all the way around. Might look like we're putting a lot down. There's actually not that much paint gone down really. It's certainly not swimming in paint. It's just about right. Well, like I say, once I'm happy, we'll put it on one side. And then come back for a second coat 5-10 minutes later. As you can see, we've still got wet paint on the cardboard. It takes forever to dry on the cardboard for some reason. And it's such a waste of paint. This is the one thing I've taken away from this build, is it's just so wasteful on the spray can paint. With the airbrush, you can direct where the paint flow is going. You get very little overspray. Using the spray can, about 80% of this paint's just absolutely wasted. It's painting everything in the background, going into the spray booth filter, the lot. So while it works, it's certainly not the cheapest way of painting. And one thing we're going to take away from this, which I'm going to mention at the end of the video, not this one, part 3, is that I hear a lot of people saying they can't afford an airbrush, so they use spray cans. If you spend £200 on an airbrush, compressor, cleaning kit, cleaner, thinner, etc., you would soon recoup that money in the amount of paint used painting car models. Trust me. I've used on this so far. This is the next day now. We've spun everything round and we're giving everything else a prime, the other side. So far, not including this, I'll run through it at the end, but we've used a full can of white primer to spray the body, full can of TS27, a full can of white primer to spray the body and chassis, full can of TS57 to spray the body, base colour and the chassis, and a near full can of the super clear to get the gloss coat down. So that there alone is £20 odd worth of paint. I can tell you now, because I finished this build as I'm doing this voiceover, we're going to use a good portion of this grey primer doing this. We're going to use a good portion of TS29, painting all the black parts, and a good portion of TS17, painting all the silver parts. That's another 3 cans near enough used. So about £40 worth of paint, say £35 worth of paint if I'm being on the lenient side. That would normally let me paint a good half dozen plus more cars quite easily using the airbrush. So you would soon recoup that cost. So it's certainly something to think of. And this way, it's an absolute nightmare. It's so slow and long to do. The only nice thing on this was no airbrush to clean. But that kind of negates all the other aspects because of the cost and mess. So while that's drying, we're going to paint our light lenses. Now, it calls to paint these in clear orange and red and then use smoke over the top. I had no smoke spray can, so I couldn't do that. So I chose to use TS29. It's a little bit dark at the end. You can't really see the clear orange and red, but it is what it is. So we're basically brush painting this into the demarcations that are there. And then I've got one of my super thin cotton buds to remove any excess paint and get the shape around the profile back. So we'll do this for the orange, repeat it for the yellow. And let this dry. It is lacquer paint, so it does dry pretty quick. Like I say, do the other side as well. There we go. Just takes a steady hand, a good eye, and that's that. And then we can come in with the red and infill the red on both sides as well. So using a 0 brush from Winsor Newton, some careful painting, and like I say, these thin cotton buds from Amazon are very handy for removing any small excess paint because they're ever so slightly absorbent while having a nice point to them to remove any excess. So they're worth investing in. Again, same to the rear side reflectors. Just give them a paint as well. And now our glass part. So carefully cutting these off. I'm zooming in a little bit too much, do apologise. Doing one piece of work, chatting away, completely forgot I was completely zoomed in. So some of it's going to be off camera. I do apologise. But we're just going to cut these off, clean it all up properly. 400 thinny stick and then a buffer polisher to get it cleaned up and back to near enough as new plastic, and we can mask it. So you might remember in the Audi video I said that the mask set left residue on the clear parts that I couldn't remove. So from now on we're going to use those mask sets I've already invested in and make a template using those. So I've got a decal sheet clear bag here. It was just knocking around, spare sheet of decals that need to be sold on. I no longer own the car. I'm just going to pop down and overlay some 18mm Tamiya tape. Measure the size, needs another one. Then what we're going to do, we're going to take the mask set off the backing, pop it on here, pull the masking tape off, cut around it with scissors, and that will be our mask set. That way we're using high quality Tamiya tape, and we should get no issues whatsoever then. So this is how we're going to do all these mask sets now. It's going to be simpler, safer, more reliable. And it's what we're going to do. So a little bit off camera, do apologise, just one of those things. But I'm literally just following the outline of the mask, carefully cutting out with my Tamiya decal scissors. Like I say, this will give us high quality Tamiya tape masks then. Do like these decal scissors from Tamiya, very, very useful. I've had a set of these in my tool set for the last 11 years. Recently renewed them because they were getting a little bit dull, but very, very high quality tool, as is everything from Tamiya. Not cheap, but cheap tools last a long. Sorry, cheap tools don't last as long as expensive tools. That's something I've learnt over the years. Buy cheap, buy twice. So just some careful cutting and we get an exact copy of that mask. And there we go, we just peel it off. And then we can put this mask back on its backing paper and use it for another build. So there we go. Now, same adage as always with these mask sets, you either get them in place the first time, or it's going to take you 15, 20 goes to get it lined up. And today, it wasn't going in place first time. Always the way, sod's law. Just line up one side, and then try and pull it over to the other and line it up. You might have to peel back and readjust a couple of times. I think it took me about 10 attempts to get this to line up properly. If you're any doubt at all, you can just grab it gently, peel it back off. Just be careful with the glass. The glass can be quite brittle, especially if it's an older kit. But it's important to get these lined up. Now, the mask set is a little bit short as well. It's not quite the right profile, which is a real shame. But it did the job and it looked okay in the end. But yeah, sod's law, either goes on first time absolutely perfectly, or you're here for about 10 minutes fiddling, trying to get it to line up and get it straight. So I like to get one corner. Once I'm happy I've got the corner absolutely spot on, I'll then fold the line at the top, drag it across, line it up, and there we go. Now we're in place. Smooth all the edges down, make sure it looks centralised. Off camera, like I say, do apologise. My bad being zoomed in too far, I'm not realising. And there we go. Burnish all the edges down and jobs are good. And we can repeat this for the rear one as well. Exactly the same method. Make our own mask set. And then we can infill the sides where we don't need any black to go onto the windows. So this was one of the two most nervous parts of using the spray cans, because I have to spray this in black. And the spray cans aren't the subtlest of sprays. And obviously if I flood the masking tape, it'll bleed. So this was one I was quite nervous of. The other one is the window rubbers around the door. But we'll deal with those later on. There's all our parts primed. Next day, we're in with TS29 semi-gloss black. And exactly the same process. Couple of coats down. Leave it overnight. Spin it around the next day. And get all the parts painted. So, yep, nightmare to do. But it's the way we said we'd do it, and here we are. So again, you can see the amount of paint going down. It's quite a lot. Also does stink as well, so please make sure you got a respirator on. You got a spray booth on, an extractor, a window open. You're not in the family room with your pets and your children. And you're not going to sit in the room while this off gases or absolutely stinks your room out, because it is not good for you, this stuff, at all. So, like I say, we just make sure we're getting even coverage all around. Not put on too heavy. Don't want to flood it. We don't want to get runs all over it or looking terrible. So we can leave that to dry for 5 or 10 minutes. And then we come in and we've got our windows mounted to a stick. And this is where we need to be really careful now. So come back a little bit. And I'm just applying a little bit of paint as we go. And then that, again, can go to one side. While they're drying, we've got some TS17 silver, and we're going to spray up all the metallic parts. Now, Tamiya doesn't do a black primer. I'm hoping that they do at some point, because it would be very, very handy. So we're doing silver over grey, which isn't the best, because you can't really directly see where it's covered, but using a spray can, there's no mistaking that it's being covered, because you're hosing the paint on. And again, a couple of coats, and then again, we'll leave it overnight, come back the next day, flip it all around, and respray it. And then this, for me, is the final coat on the black. So just very carefully and gingerly getting it down to stick enough, and then just put it to one side and leave it the hell alone. So yes, a little bit worried that we're going to get some seepage there, but it actually turned out quite well. Not too bad. And then last, just a quick final overhead spray of this. As you see, I'm not hosing it on. I'm trying to be as directional as I can. And there we go. We can just leave that to dry overnight. And unfortunately, we've got to flip it all around. and do it again. Another coat on the metallic part. So these do call out for different colours, but to do that, it's just a faff with the spray can. So I decided a bit of, what's the word? Artist impression, even though I'm not an artist. We'll just do it all TS17 because it'll all look good in the end. And there we go. They can dry, ready for tomorrow. Several days worth of work here. I think we started this and it took 8 days from start to finish. So not too shabby really. Nice, easy, simple kit. We will revisit later on and we'll build a different version as well and build it the normal way, the 2K and the airbrush and everything. So it'd be interesting to compare them side by side. So next day now, unmasking this, absolutely perfect. No issues there whatsoever. A big sigh of relief. No overspray, no seepage. We've got a few light dust spots of black on the exterior of the glass, but we'll soon wipe that off in a minute. Just very carefully unmask it. You do not put any stress on the side windows, it'll break off. But looking good so far. So there's one of the nerve-wracking parts out of the way. Now all we're going to do is mask up the window rubbers later, which will prove interesting. So there isn't any overspray on the exterior. You're going to get the odd mist putting that down, amount of paint down. We've got some UMP airbrush cleaner, a nice clean bit of cotton cloth, and we're just going to very gently rub over it, and that should take off any remnants of paint that have landed as overspray and get you back to pretty much clean plastic. Just be gentle, like I say, quite fragile this plastic clear parts. So just take your time, clean it up, and should get rid of any overspray really. If you need to use anything harsher, use Mr. Hobby Leveling Thinner, and that will get off any remnants as well. So next day we can spin everything around. I'm not going to show the painting of this as well, but I am more importantly showing the monotony of what it takes to spray can. Because for me this was the easiest way of doing it, but it takes a long time. You got to wait for everything to dry, to spray the other side, so it's a little bit of a pain, but it certainly works, so it can be done. One thing I would recommend is get the parts as close to each other as you possibly can, because you will save paint. Fill up all those gaps. I wish I'd done this the first time around, but I didn't. Yeah, literally fill up every gap, and then we do the same for the black part as well. So as you see, it gets good paint coverage on the other side. Some of it does go under and through, so there's no real issues there at all. But it is still a bit of a pain having to do this, and obviously because of the nature of the paint and then letting it sit on the masking tape, you've got to make sure it's fully dry, so you've got to wait for the next day. So a little bit of a pain. So they've been sprayed off camera now, and we're going to leave those to dry. And we need to brush paint some of the wheel arches, some of the detail parts, the fuel tank, etc. So I've got some Vallejo model colour black with a couple of drops of water in. We've got a nice flat Tamiya HF brush. I'm just going to go around, follow the instructions and paint everywhere it calls for this. If we get any paint where it shouldn't be, because we're putting acrylic water-based paint over lacquer, it will literally rub off. So no real issue if we get any paint where we don't need it, because we literally come with a moistened cotton bud and it will take it straight off. So just a couple of light coats, working our way around, following our instructions. Quite simple really. It is quite nice to brush paint from time to time. Kind of takes you back to your roots, like being a teenager again. Only this time we're not going to blow up the model with a rocket or shoot it, although it is tempting. As you can see, the Vallejo model colour covers absolutely beautifully, very highly pigmented, and then with one of our cotton buds we can come in and literally wipe off any excess paint. Nice and simple, like so. We also need to mask the upper part of the front splitter, so we're going to do that off camera, and again we'll just dust over it with a couple of lights at TS29 just to get some paint on there. We did contemplate brush painting it, but I think it's going to look much better spray can for that smoother finish. We painted the rear inner arches as well, the engine at the front, the sump on it, and the fuel tank as well. So that can sit and dry now for 20 minutes or so, and that'll be pretty much dry. We can now brush paint our engine and transmission. So start off with some Vallejo silver, and again, just carefully going around, brush painting everywhere, nice and slow. Probably take a couple of coats to do, so don't try and get it all in one go. Just take your time. Put one coat down, let it dry, come back in 20 minutes later for your second coat, and that will pretty much do it. It's good stuff, it does cover well, very highly pigmented as well. And again, because we're putting water-based paint over lacquer, anything we get extra where we don't want it, it will literally rub back off. So quite forgiving, nice and easy. Finishing off our second coat now. As you can see, the coverage is really good. Not too bad at all. Now, the instructions did call to paint some other parts in black. I'll be honest, I thought, no, not doing that. So left it as is. And there we go. With the front splitter painted now in TS29. It's got a nice semi-gloss finish to it. Everything else is painted. And we're ready for all our running gear and other parts and bits and bobs to go on. And we get this thing on its wheels. Body shell's looking good. Quick check. Yeah, we're looking good there. So the engine block that was painted in TS17, we're going to paint up in Mr. Hobby. 2 seconds. I have the paint bottle in front of me. C61, which is burnt iron. Straight out the pot. Just going to lightly brush paint it on. As long as you don't consistently drag the brush over the paint, it won't react with the lacquer underneath, and you can get quite a nice brush painting finish this way. It's when you keep repeatedly running the paintbrush over, that's when you'll get issues with it lifting the paint underneath. So just going to follow the instructions, paint all the lower half of the block, and then we can start adding all the ancillary parts to the engine and get this built up. So a very strange little motor, this thing. The Wankel unit's very, very minute, very compact, very clever as well. We also do our pulleys around our belts in the burnt iron C61 as well. Mr. Hobby. Just some careful painting. Again, a little bit of detail here and there. It's not the most detailed engine bay, it's quite lacking, to be honest, in areas, but it's a £13 kit. So again, comes with an engine, it's not too bad. Drive shafts, painting these in the burnt iron colour as well. Might not be correct, but the paint was out. I needed to paint these, and I thought, you know what, let's do this. So a couple of light coats of those on them. And then our brake calipers, we've got Mr. Colour C3 red. And again, we're just going to brush paint all the calipers in red. It does call out for more of a burnt iron colour like we just used, but I thought red would look good through the wheels, and it'll go with the yellow quite well. So I decided on this. And again, just a nice, generous coat. The idea is don't brush it as much as dab, and you won't really have any issues with the paint reacting. And we put this to one side to dry overnight, and when we come back the next day, it'll all be ready to assemble. So just take your time. Nice fine brush. Winsor Newton are my brushes. I absolutely love them. Very, very high quality. They always keep their point well. I've got brushes that have been absolutely abused, and they work just fantastic. Can't rate them high enough. They're not that expensive. Everybody says they're very expensive brushes. They're around the £8 mark each, so not too much really for your typical modelling sizes. Same paint, we're going to do our suspension springs. Now, probably totally wrong for this type of car, but going with red. Why am I going with red? Well, the paint was already out. They needed painting something. They were supposed to be left black. I wanted to add a little bit of colour, so I went with red. Purely and simply because the paint pot was out. So again, same way of painting, load up the brush it on, don't keep repeatedly going over it, get it in place, turn it round, moving on. And then on the rest of the differential, we're going to paint some black onto these parts as well. This is a Vallejo model colour black. Drop of water in there, and again, some careful painting. Just adds a little bit of detail to the parts. It makes them look a bit more visually interesting. And same on the struts. We painted the spring red. I'm just going to paint the actual shock absorber black. Again, just for a bit of visual interest. Make it look a bit more interesting. Not just a monotony of silver or black. Just add a nice bit of detail. Like so. Some careful brush painting again. We'll put water-based paint over lacquer, so not the end of the world. We need to take a little bit off. Vallejo Model Air Silver now, and we're going to brush paint all these parts on the suspension. I'm not going to show everyone, but you can see how well this paint covers over black. Absolutely phenomenal paint. Very, very good. Got another Tamiya flat brush here, a bit of an older one. This one's a bit splayed out on this brush bristles. But it still does the job. Like I said, we do get any in places we don't want it, we'll wipe right off anyway. I'm just going to work our way around all this running gear until we follow the instructions and everything is painted up according to those. So need to grab more of these Vallejo colours because the silver is very, very good. I know there's a few more on the range, so it's definitely something I'm going to pick up. I use this paint all the time and it just covers so well. No problems at all. I'm not a fan of airbrushing them. I had the entire set and they are terrible. But the colours brush paint really well. Strut brace, one side is silver. I did contemplate masking this and breaking out a red spray can just to paint this, and I thought that'd be absolutely ludicrous to do that, so decided we'll brush paint it. Same colour we did the springs and the brakes, so everything's matching. We'll just go around, give it a thin coat of paint. Coverage is phenomenal on this paint. Just like the Tamiya LPs, very highly pigmented, and they do brush paint really well. Just got to know how to do it. Don't keep going over it all. Make sure you get everywhere covered. Load your brush up, and away you go. Once you're happy you've got it covered, put it to one side to dry. I like to leave paints like this overnight. This is normally the end of the day for me, and then we come back the next day and crack on. So we're going to put our auxiliary belt system onto the engine block itself. So a few dabs on the locator points. Make sure you got the right way around, refer to your instructions. Line the locator holes, pop it in place. There we go. Make sure it's push fully home. You got everything straight, everything's connected properly. And then we can pop on top what I'm guessing is the inlet manifold. Line it up on its locator points. A couple of drops of CA glue. Push it down and it's glued in place, ready for popping into the car itself. So first of all, we're going to put our brake master cylinder in place. So we painted this in TS29 black. I brush painted it in some white paint. I actually used white UMP primer for this. A little dab of CA glue onto the locating point. Pop it in place. We'll paint the cap later on black. And then with this part over the other side, I'm not even pretend to know what this is. No idea at all, but it's something else. It's sitting over here. So there we go. Get the CA glue to grab it. Position it, make sure it's straight. And then a few dabs of CA glue where the engine mounts itself. Line it up. Push it down. Make sure it's all straight. Was a little bit tricky to get straight, so it's worth paying attention here. And then popping on this cover over the top. Like so. So it's a simple engine, but it looks alright. You could add detail to it, I suppose, if you could buy an aftermarket engine or detail upset. But as I said all along, for a £13 kit, it's not too bad a kit at all. We will revisit this later on. I'm looking at trans kits for them. So we'll come back in super detail on a later point. I painted the suspension tops in Vallejo colour black our strut brace, a couple of dabs of CA glue on its locating points, and then just pop it in place, push it down, hold it for a second, and there we go. That's that done. I've assembled all the rear subframe. We've got our polycap in, just find out which disc is which. Get rid of a hitchhiker of a cocktail stick. There we go. Bit of CA glue. So the polycap's in. We're going to put the CA glue around the edge, away from the polycap itself. We don't want to get it anywhere near the center. And then these will only go on one way. And now directional. So make sure everything's lined up properly. Everything's facing the right way and you are using the right parts, because nothing more annoying than coming back the next day realizing that you haven't quite got things lined up. We're going to put the subframe in, and we're just going to use our tweezers to get the shock assembly through the back of the car, through the top there. Same on this side, so push down, grab your tweezers, and gently manipulate the shock into the tower like so. And there we go, hold it. The CA glue will grab a hold of it. Job's a good one. Exhaust system, couple of dabs of CA glue on the locating point. And just line it up, push it in, like so, then line it up with the engine itself. Get some tweezers in there to get rid of force, there we go. And then the front subframe as well, with the steering arm and the hubs in place with the brake calipers and discs already in place. A few dabs of CA glue will hold these in place, no bother at all. There we go, line everything up, make sure it's all nice and straight, get the locating points in, and then get the actual steering hubs into their holes, top and bottom. Make sure everything's orientated correctly and lined up, and there we go. There is our running gear assembled. Not too bad, to be fair, not bad at all. We've got some Tamiya black panel line wash. I've thinned it with a little bit of Winsor Newton Sansador to get a much thinner wash, and I'm going to go around and wash everything metallic. So capillary action will work a lot better with it being thinner. We don't need a nice thick wash on this one. A thin wash will be more than enough to accentuate all the raised and recessed areas. So it's a case just go around the entire model, leave that to dry for a good half hour or so, and then we can come back and wipe off any excess. But yeah, not going bad so far. The spray can's done the job well. Do like this TS17, I airbrush it quite often, and it is a very, very nice metallic colour. Apologies about the camera, it does still play up from time to time, going out of focus. It is on my list to buy. Brand new camera. But there we go, just go around, I'll apply our wash where it's needed, and then we can let that dry and come back later on and remove the excess. Now the wheels, I did and ah about the wheels. Should I strip them? Should I paint them a different colour? And you know what, looking at them, they're actually a pretty nice colour. They're pretty well chromed, but it's not too shiny. It's like a satin effect, so I opted to leave them be. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put a wash in, same wash we used on the metallic part on the underbody, and just give them all a wash, let it dry, remove the excess, and pop our decals on and our tyres. So yeah, really nice coloured rims. Not bad at all. So they're going to look good on the car. That's what we're going to do. The tyres, I've got a tyre de-seaming tool. I believe you can use a cuticle remover as well. Ever such a slight seam in the middle. This sharp tool will get right in there and gets rid of it very, very quick, as you can see. Takes a little bit of care and a bit of technique to do. Just carefully go around. I'll show doing one and do the four off camera. Like so. Take a little bit of time, but looks better. Never used to remove all the seams, but I do now. Force a habit because you lot see everything on camera. I can't hide everything, even if it's blurry like this. But this little tool does a good job. Sent to me by Kevin quite a while back. And very, very handy. You could sand them off if you wish, but this just gets rid of the bulk of the seam first. So it's a quicker, easier way of doing it. And then once we've got rid of the seam as much as we possibly can, we'll grab our 220 UMP sponge and just rough up the tyre and get rid of any remnants of that seam as well. So once we go around the entire tyre, just rub off the dust, and there we go. Repeat that for the others, and we're good. Cut off all our wheels off the sprue, and we can mount our tyres. So there we go, just push over the top, no problem at all. Quick look on the front, there we go, they're looking good, not too bad at all. And then repeat for the other 3, and we are good to go. So again, we did contemplate putting bigger wheels on. I have another set of wheels that would have fitted this. They were basically a bigger style of this wheel, but I thought, no, a lot of people said to keep it out of the box, so I decided to keep them. The wheels don't look bad. The kit needs lowering a touch, as we'll see at the end, but the kit wheels don't look bad. So removing the excess wash, we've got a little bit of Winsor Newton Santador on the cotton bud, and we'll go round and remove all the excess wash. Out of focus again. There's a particular point on the camera zoom where it will not focus, and it's right on that point here. It's a real pain in the backside, so I do apologise. All 4 wheels in place, looking good. We're going to remove all the excess wash from around the model. So happy how this is looking, considering it's been spray canned. Doesn't look too bad. A little bit of tonal difference and variation on the metallic parts would have been good, but to do that would have used a lot more spray paint, and I wasn't prepared to do that. And I couldn't resist a quick test fit of the body on the chassis. It does ride a little bit high on the front. If it was to build it again, I would lower it, but that is us today. Okay then, there we go. So that's where we're at today. Looking alright, not too bad. The running gear's all done. It seems to sit quite well on the chassis. Tricky painting all those small parts. It really, really is tricky mounting them all for paint. It's time consuming. It's a huge waste of paint. It really, really is. But I will admit, it's quite nice not having to clean the airbrush. That is the only benefit to using the spray cans. Like I said, I've got thoughts on all this. I'm going to discuss it all at the end. We'll be back in part 3 very, very soon, because it's there. It's all filmed, all edited. Just needs voiceover and uploading. Finish off the interior, get the body polished, and get it all finished and done and dusted. So there you go. If you like the video, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. I do read all the comments you all leave me, and do appreciate every single one. Thanks everyone that takes the time to do it. I might not reply to you all, but I do read them all, and I do heart every single one as well. So thank you very much if you do take the time. Make sure you sub to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and click the bell notification to get notified of all our latest videos. So like I said, we'll be back in part 3 very soon, so stand by for that one. If you wish to support more content on the channel, there's a Patreon me link in the description down below, and a PayPal me link as well if you'd rather use that way. All your contributions are greatly received, and I do thank everybody that has become a patron over the past couple of months. It is much appreciated. And as always, check out International Scale Model Facebook page and forum, umpretail.com. We can get a lot of the products I use in my videos. The links are in the description down below. Check out the Live the Bench page, the Off Air Hangout group, my Paul ISM personal and modelling page as well, and the ISM GB page for all the group builds that are ongoing at the minute. There we go. Thanks for watching, everyone. Take care. I'll see you all next time.